So going to start a little bit of a new thing. Miles, you inspired me with your idea of a bell.
Oh,
So
yeah.
what I'm going to do with this bell today, just for a little different, I'm going to set it down. I have a djembe drum in front of me that my phone is sitting on, and the bell is resting on it. So it gets a really nice resonance coming through the drum as well as the bowl itself. So for today, usually we start with a meditation. So I'm going to start by ringing a bell, but what I'm going to ask, I'm just going to let it ring until it stops. And so if we can just really focus in on the sound of the bell. Today's a lot about sound, believe it or not. It's turning into like a co-topic. So as the meditation, just follow the sound all the way to the end until you just can't hear it anymore. And the more faint it gets, the more concentration you'll need. And if your mind wanders, it'll be gone. And then you just come back to the sound. So that'll be the way we get the meeting started. And hopefully you will be able to hear this okay. The phone is sitting practically on top of the bowl, so I think you should hear it pretty well. All right, here we go. I think that's about it. Unless you have a bionic ear. So well, thank you. Thank you for joining us this morning. That was a sound, a meditation that you came in a little late, so I think you got to experience it. So the topic today, interesting the way it came about. I usually come up with a theme, a discussion theme, several days or even a week in advance. And this time I had an idea, but I wasn't 100% sure about it. And so for the first time, and this was yesterday morning, I just decided to just see what happens. I just took out a blank notebook and a pen, and I just sat, and I was up in Vermont, in a beautiful place, just surrounded by nature. I just asked for guidance, like, let me just see what comes through. And so I just sat there, and as much as I could, stilled and quieted my mind. And the topic that popped in right away was the one that actually I had been thinking about. I was trying not to think about it in that moment. It's like, let's let it go and see what happens. But it popped in right away. And that was the word surrender. And I've been thinking about using surrender as a really juicy discussion topic. So, okay, so surrender came, and then I'm like, all right, now what? So I sat, and then I just started writing whatever came. And I wrote 3 pages. And I was like, okay, I think I have enough. So I did, I do have a few notes because I didn't think I'd remember everything I wrote. But the first thing that actually came to me as I was thinking about it, first thing that came in was a question. Surrender to what? She's like, yeah, what is it we're surrendering to? So what came after that was, it's more, to me, it's more of an allowing. Surrender can be seen as a giving up. I think mainstream, definition would be to just give in, give up, stop trying or whatever. And that's really not what we're talking about today. It's about allowing a greater, higher intelligence to come through rather than using our mind for everything. Because our minds are so finite and limited versus the vast intelligence of the universe. And then the question really is, how do we tap into that? If that's there and our minds are just so limited, how do we turn our mind from just a thinking machine into like a radio receiver to like just let it come in? And the answer to that is, the surrender to it comes through stillness. And so that's what the meditation this morning was really about, stilling your mind to allow that to flow through. So we're going to explore that. And I asked Miles to help me out as well with some thoughts, but I'm sure everybody can have a few words to say about it. I'm hoping that we turn this into just a discussion, because it's a really interesting topic. So before we jump into it, we always like to start with a song to get us going. So I asked Dean to just surrender to whatever comes to him, and I try not to give really any direction, just like, hey, whatever you feel is good.
All right.
So
So I'm going to ask for everybody to just relax into this melody. You can close your eyes if you want. Come into the spirit of community, of being together, gratitude. Know that you're not alone. None of us are really alone. And just breathe.
Recording in progress.
Breathe in real slow. Breathe out, let go. Breathe in, let go. Breathe in, breathe out. And know it's all right. It's okay. Be gentle. Say, I know. Let it flow. Let it in, let it know. Come in, Spirit, fall fresh on me. Fill me with peace and power. Satisfy my needs. Make me whole. Give me strength and let me grow. Come in, Spirit, fall fresh on me. Come in, Spirit, fall fresh on me. Fill me with peace and power. Satisfy all my needs. Make me whole. Give me strength. Let me grow. Come in, Spirit, fall fresh on me. And breathe and know, gently know, let it flow. Let it in. And know. And know.
Thank you. That doesn't sound like a song that you took from someone else.
That's beautiful.
Thank you so much, Dean, for that amazing, moving piece of music. So one of the other questions that came to mind was why is our culture so against surrender and allowing and so insistent on our mind figuring everything out? It's it's the ego that I was reminded means to edge God out, EGO. That seems to be running the show. If you think about all the emphasis in our higher learning institutions about STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, none of that has to do with creativity. Everyone talks about, being a starving artist because there's no livelihood in that. Society just doesn't give it really any worth. It's nice to see a piece of art, but or obviously music, you can make a living in music if you're good enough and lucky enough. But it's just there's always resistance to it, and it makes it more of a challenge for us to let that piece of us go. That for so long we've been told, stop daydreaming, just use logic to figure everything out. So letting go of that mind is definitely a challenge for us. And even Einstein said, and you may have heard this, but he said that, the thinking that caused the problems we have can't be solved with the same thinking that caused the problem. And I think what he was really saying was that the problems of mind can't be solved with mind. And he also talked about some of his greatest breakthroughs not coming from him thinking. They came to him when he wasn't thinking. So where is it coming from? It's another question. So if we're letting go of our minds and creating this space for this other stuff to flow in, where is it coming from? Everyone has a different name for the higher power. But there's also this interesting theory, I guess, for lack of a better word, of a phenomenon known as the field. And it's just this field of vast intelligence that's, in a different plane, but is accessible to everybody. And we just have to be able to tune into it. And that's where the source of that, which is the source of everything, knows a lot better than we do using our finite minds. What's the best path? What's the shortest distance from here to where you want to go? It's easy for us to want to manage, micromanage everything in our lives and use our preferences. Someone comes into our life for, no apparently good reason. We might decide, well, I don't really like that person, so I'm not going to pay any attention. Or maybe it's a path, it's a job, or it's something else that presents itself. You're like, oh no, I don't think I want to do that. We continually just keep reverting back to our personal preferences, what we like, what we don't like, and ignore the fact that maybe these paths are put in front of us because it's going to lead us to some other door, some other path that we could never have imagined on our own. And that makes me think about a book, some of you know it well, called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. And this is a guy that in his, I think, early 20s, he was down in Jacksonville, I think somewhere in Florida, in northern Florida. And he just went into the woods to meditate. He had like a little VW bus or something. And he's like, I'm just going to go somewhere. All he wanted to do was just, find enlightenment, go be alone and meditate. But he kept on getting bothered by things that would come up, opportunities and different things. And he finally decided, you know what, I'm just going to say yes to everything for, just to see what happens. So as much as he just hated the idea of something, he just said yes, because it came up. He's like, who am I to say this is not the right thing to do? So we started taking jobs and doing different things that he would never otherwise probably do. He was pretty handy, and he built a really cool little house for himself. And someone's like, hey, could you build me a house? And he's like, he'd normally be like, well, no, I don't build houses for people. He's like, sure. So he built the house for the guy. And then someone else like, hey, could you build me a house? He's like, okay. Next thing you know, he had a construction company, he was building houses all over the place. And very successful, but that wasn't his path, because then he ended up, some other opportunity came. I don't remember the order of things, but it was a teaching job. He decided he didn't want to be a teacher, but an opportunity came up and he's like, okay, I'll do it. And then that led to something different. You know, the story goes on and on and on about things that he would normally not prefer to do, that he just said yes. And at the end of the day, he ended up becoming a billionaire CEO of a internet medical company that became WebMD. And that wasn't his goal at all. He sat down one day at a Radio Shack and started tinkering with the TRS-80, whatever the heck that first computer was. And he decided he loved programming computers. And so he just went with it. And then he created this online medical, I forget what it was exactly, billing or something, but it turned into much more. So this is an example of what allowing and saying yes really can mean. But it takes so much faith to know, to trust that there's a higher power that's ultimately going to take care of me and has only the best for me. That's directing the show. It's not me and my teeny little mind inside my brain. So I think that's a really good lesson. And another person that popped up as I was doing this, another writer named Mike Dooley, he uses a great analogy for allowing, this idea of surrender. And his main teaching is about how to manifest, things in your life. It's very spiritual, but yet it also tends to be a little bit materialistic, because it's always about manifesting stuff in it. But anyway, his analogy with the GPS is, look, you start off with a GPS. First of all, you have to know where you are. And then you have to know where you're going. And once you plug in, once you know where you are and know where you're going to go to, you leave the rest of it alone. You let the GPS decide what's the best path to get you there. You don't micromanage every decision. The thing says turn right, and be like, well, wait a minute. Do I really want to turn right? Does that road look like a road I want? Maybe I want to go left. We just give up and surrender to the GPS knows the right path. It might know the traffic, it might know whatever. And that's another way to look at it is, yes, we use our minds all the time to problem solve and, to just get through our day and to set goals. But at some point we do have to let go and just allow, the different available paths to show themselves, and know that, there's something going on here, knows more than I do, the best way to get me there. So let me just stop there for a minute. I have some more stuff that, I'm just kind of regurgitating back what was coming in as I was writing, sort of stream of consciousness or automatic writing, whatever you want to call it. I was just going. But I don't want to make this about me just saying all this stuff without you having a chance to chime in. So what are you thinking, Miles?
Wow, thank you, Bill. Thank you. Good morning, beloveds. I know that that's an important piece for me in my work, is surrender. It was something I was intuitively gravitating toward as an antidote for patterns of behavior. Say, well, this isn't necessarily working for me. Maybe I need to let this go. And the more awareness work that I do, it translates to acceptance. There's an acceptance piece of this that has me understanding why I am attached to certain patterns of behavior. And understanding that brings me to sort of a crossroads where I can actually regard myself negatively by saying, well, why did you do that? How did you get there? And because it is ingrained, because it is a pattern, it will continue to repeat unless I put tools in place that allow me to say, surrender, accept, and then surrender, which to me means turning it over to the God of my understanding. So those patterns are always with me. They're always, echoing, whispering to whatever degree. And I'm invited to surrender all the time. Because as Dean was singing about, as I heard over and over again, it's so important to be open to the flow of life.
Mm.
Otherwise, the resistance to it will kind of have us in a whirlpool. We'll just stay on the river in Matt's place. So I'll stop there and we'll see what anybody else has to say.
I like
Mint.
one of the things that you were mentioning was just about what brought to mind was about attachment, and sometimes that's the hardest. It's hardest for us to surrender because we have, or at least for me, I might have in my mind how something should go. So I'll resist how it's going, because how things are actually going, because in my mind, okay, this is how it's supposed to go. So then your mind tries to come up with solutions, or you try to do actions to make things happen. And then you become more and more nervous, or more afraid, or your monkey mind gets into the role of what's going to happen, or this or that, and this is what's happening. You just kind of can get rolled all up into that. And I find just like how you started it, Bill, with sound, and just if we can quiet our mind and focus on something like sound or water, or be out in nature and get to that still space where we can just open up and relax. And I think like you said, Miles, it's like you're invited to surrender all the time. I feel like it's sometimes it can be a minute to minute experience. Certainly day-to-day experience of letting go of the notion of how we think something should go. And I love, Bill, that you brought up Michael Singer, because he was a great example of that, of somebody saying, hey, come build a house. And when I read that book, I was like, I wouldn't have done that. What are you talking about? But just kind of going with it and be like, this is where it's at, and who knows where this is going to lead me. But you think of like, yesterday was, I went down to the stream and I had some dried flowers, and I just tossed them into the stream, kind of like as a form of a prayer. And, I just watched them flow. And that's, in our own souls, it's about, learning to really truly trust and not afraid of what's going to happen all the way around the journey, but just trusting that we're being led every day with love to the right path, and letting go of those doubts and fears. So I don't know if those are just some of my thoughts on it, but yeah, surrender is what I'm dealing with right now. Maybe somebody can relate.
Years ago, I used to do a lot of whitewater rafting years ago. And I remember vividly, it was a class 5, 6 whitewater. And the guide said, it's going to get rough, and it's not uncommon for someone to get bounced out of the raft. So he said, if that happens, don't fight the water, because you will lose, right? So if that happens, all you need to do is roll on your back, point your feet downstream, cross your arms over your chest, and the water will take you around the rocks.
It's amazing.
He said, surrender to the river.
Yeah.
And I think about that often. We get into a time of trial, and we start trying to figure it out, fight, grab onto the rocks, when we just need to surrender, meaning give in to the power, and you'll be taken around the rocks to safety.
Mm,
Beautiful.
that's a great metaphor.
Wow, Dean, I love that. You just blew my mind. I did a sermon using river rafting as a metaphor with those same
Yeah.
sort of that surrender. And the specific my experience on the Colorado River was what I call a vertical eddy, where the water descends to the bottom and then comes back up.
Yeah.
And that's the most important place, is to allow yourself to descend. Let the river pull you down, because it will bring you back up. And what a great metaphor for our hearts and our spiritual growth, that we must actually descend before we can ascend. Thanks, Dean.
Wow. We need a rafting trip. Yeah, nature is a great teacher. I mean, it's used all the time. Jesus used it, Buddha used it, you know, Saint Francis used, I mean, on and on and on and on. And if you think about nature in terms of the idea of surrender, I think it was Eckhart Tolle who was talking about nature, and he said, you know, if creatures could speak, if you went up to a squirrel or a bird or something and said, hey, what time is it? They'd be like, what are you talking about? It's now. Like, that's all nature knows. It's just now. And it just completely surrenders to what is. There's no resistance at all. And even if, oh, come on in. Hey,
Come on.
are you here for the service?
Oh,
Oh.
no, I'm just checking out the area.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
All right, no problem. So, yeah, and then if you think about, you know, the plants and everything, sometimes, you know, fires come, forest fires. You know, unfortunately, they're coming a lot more than they used to, but it just surrenders to it, and it just allows it to burn, and it's going to end, and it knows, and it's healthy for regrowth. It's all part of the cycle. If you're ever in the woods and you look around, you're going to see death and decay all around you and new growth all around you. It's just this beautiful cycle that just doesn't resist. And even animals, you know, if you think about predators and prey, you know, if you're an antelope in Africa, there are lions looking for you, but do you think they are constantly in fear? I don't think they are. I think they're just totally present and alert. And, you know, if the situation arises, they take the action necessary to escape danger. But it's not like they're just constantly afraid of lions and they become incapacitated and they need to speak to an antelope therapist because they can't get past their fear of lions, and they, you know, they're having all these challenges in life. It just doesn't happen in nature, because they just go with what is. So it's just such a good teacher for us to spend time out there and just really tap into that allowing. So that's just another thing that definitely, because I was sitting amongst nature when I was thinking about this, and it's like, man, you know, you just look at a tree, and you're like, trees is a tree, like it's not trying to be something else. So it's such a great metaphor and a great teacher. Yeah. So I don't know if this is a good time. If Miles, did you want to bring in some more of our sound as a healer idea for today? Because I think clearing the mind is, I think, a misnomer. It's not easy to do that, but allowing the thoughts to just pass through and not attach to them is another form of surrender. So when we're trying to quiet our mind and find a place of stillness, it's not about stopping anything and resisting. You know, if you think about the thoughts as that river that you just give into, but don't attach to any particular, you know, current. It's not like when you're watching a river, you know, you see a ripple and you just follow it and you just keep following. You start running along the river to follow that, you see where it goes. You let it go, and you just sit and constantly let it pass by, let it pass by, let it pass by. So if we can learn to do that with our thoughts and just become aware when we do start chasing them down the river, is just go back and sitting and watching it go by. I think that's a great way to help us practice this practice of allowing, creating open space to allow that vast intelligence to come in and to guide us when we need it. So Miles and I talked about using a form of sound in the specific form of chanting. And chanting's been, every faith tradition has chanting as a part of it, as a way to help focus, on something other than our thoughts and allow that spaciousness. And it's powerful, very powerful. So we thought we would try some of that, but I hope I'm not stepping in your toes here, because I want to let you introduce this part of it and lead us. Assuming you still want to do that.
Sure. No, I'm all set. I'm all set. I'm all ready. I love, Bill, how you make this sound so intentional. When the origin of this was that Dean wasn't going to be here today, and we were trying to figure out how to fill it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we all chant. We don't have instruments or something. And yet, that being in the flow of this, I have noticed so many beautiful, beautiful elements that are weaving themselves together. For instance, this chant, which I'm going to teach to you, it's very simple. It has a descending melody. Dean gave this, each line went down a little bit. So it was sort of a descending melody and then repeated itself. And I have done the same thing, and we did this independently. So I noticed there was this synergy that occurred there, the metaphor of flow, water, and singing. So this devotion, and now I sent out a PDF to you, Bill. I don't know if you had a chance to print it for those in the room. I'm going to put the words into the chat for the Zoomers. And let's see, did they go in?
I'll pull them up.
Okay, the words are in. Let's see. What I noticed as I was creating this, and I'm just going to do quick translation. Om, obviously, is we tend to know as the primal sound, that sound of God. Shanti, meaning peace. The loka samasta sukhino bhavantu is translated here as such. May all beings everywhere be happy and free, and may the thoughts, words, and actions of my own life contribute in some way to that happiness and to that freedom for all. This is something that is close to me, and so I sort of compiled something here. But when we're talking about surrender, I find myself quite often going, well, why do I think that? Is that part of my old story? Is that the one I inherited when we talk about things? And why do we sing it 3 times? And there are a lot of reasons in Buddhism and Hindu chants that you do these things 3 times. One to say, invoke peace on the 3 levels of consciousness: waking, dreaming, sleeping. We do it 3 times to soothe and bring peace to the body, mind, and spirit. And this was the one that really got me, the 3 times to harmonize the 3 lokas, which is Sanskrit for worlds. And that is earth, heaven, and hell. Now, when I said hell, I was thinking to myself, well, everybody's got their own definition, their own visualization, imagination, feeling, emotional connection to what that word is. And it is such a hot word. We use it seriously. We use it in jest sometimes. So I want each of us here, when we hear that word hell, invite in the old story. What does it look like to you? Write it on a chalkboard in your mind's eye and see that. Draw the picture of what that means. I'm not going to name any of it. What I'm going to invite us to do now is to pick up the eraser and go to that chalkboard with that image, that old image, and just wipe it clean. So when the chalkboard is empty, I'm going to reframe, possibly invite you to redefine this for us in this as we sing the three lokas. That hell is actually when we are in the grip of attachment. That heaven is when we are free from those attachments. And the earthly plane is the dance floor between the two. So we have our chant, it's up there, hopefully people can see it. I will just sing the line, you'll get a sense of it. Those on Zoom, please mute so we don't have the delay. Hopefully it will jibe. It's always a risky thing when we're singing in hybrid. And someday we may sing together, which is called kirtan, devotional singing as a group. But today, let's feel the vibrations. And as someone once said, singing is like praying twice. So we get to do this and bring this in. And peace is really the message here. So surrender to this to somehow perfume our hearts as we go forward into the world. All right, I've got Dean's melody in my head. Om Shanti Om Shanti Om Shanti Om. That's all it is. And we do that 3 times. Second line is the same. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. And we repeat the Om Shanti Om, but the second and third lines are I am peace and we are peace. And then we finish with 3 Oms. So I will begin, feel free to join with me. I will just do all the numbers and may God be with us. Om Shanti Om Shanti Om Shanti Om Om Shanti Om Shanti Om Shanti Om Om Shanti Om Shanti Om Shanti Om Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om. Om Shanti Om. I am peace. We are peace. Om Shanti Om. I am peace. We are peace. Om Shanti Om. I am peace. We are peace. Om. Thank you.
That's great. Just take a minute to let that settle in. What called you to that particular chant, Miles?
The Loka Samasta is kind of my context for how I am in this world. If I lead with that love and that peace, I am tethered to the direction of right path. I just connected the two of those, because a lot of times it's Om Shanti, 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 3 times with Shanti. And I just created this for today.
Oh, so this chant was of your own making. It wasn't one you just picked up. Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, and Dean, did you preconceive that melody?
Well, what happened was, I do what I do is I noodle in a melody. And I started writing it, and then I remembered a song that I had done many years ago called Fall Afresh on Me. So I changed the lyrics of that to fit with what I was doing. So it was a hybrid situation. Yeah, but I had made up the melody, and then that one kind of tied into it.
Did you notice the similarities in terms of
Sure.
how the, yeah.
I
great.
did, absolutely.
Remarkable.
Yeah, it really was. You could probably do the chant to the descending chord progression that I did.
If we plan these things, but then it's no fun when we have to.
Yeah.
plan them.
Yeah, it defeats the purpose of the topic of conversation too, to some degree. Does anyone else have a reaction to that experience? And he's
Just that it was very peaceful.
Yeah.
Mhm. Makes me want to do it all the time.
Lovely.
any Zoomers out there would like to chime in?
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
That was just wonderful. I loved it.
When
Yeah.
I'm driving and feel like anxious or stressed out to get somewhere, like even on the way here, it's a bit late, and but I Om Shanti.
Oh, wow.
I do. If not just Om and just long, and I suck in my belly as I love the part where the resonating, the ending, just how perfect. But I loved you so much. Thank you, Dean.
Mm.
With that book.
Yeah, Om is believed to be, in the Hindu faith and others too, the sound of creation itself. It's the most powerful vibration there is. So when we chant Om, especially when we chant Om from the heart space, imagine that it's coming from there. It is powerful. It's a wonderful way to center. We do. Yeah. And Shanti is peace. So when we use those two words together, it's a powerful, and the vibration that, we don't understand or realize or comprehend the impact that a high vibration can have on the world. We might just be chanting and it feels good and that's all it is, but there's so much going on behind the scenes in the invisible realm. It's like that ripple across sound waves that are invisible, like just goes out. And it's really amazing. That's why we do this. It's obviously to be together in community and everything, but it's also, there's a higher purpose to it, and it's to create that ripple. I've read that there are monks in caves there specifically to just keep the world from falling apart. They meditate, it's all they do. And they're at such a high vibrational space and consciousness level that energy keeps us from, tearing each other apart. Without that, the balance would tilt the wrong way. It already feels like it is, but it could be so much worse. So, and I don't have any proof of that, but it sounds good, sounds right. So that comes from a book I refer to a lot, Power versus Force, from David Hawkins. Pretty amazing book. So yeah.
Something I wanted to mention about chanting Om. When you chant Om, it's a long exhalation, so it triggers the parasympathetic nervous system response. And that's why when you chant Om, you feel so calm afterwards. It's a long exhalation.
Yeah.
Another benefit.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Miles, did you have any other pieces to what you wanted to cover today?
I'd love to make some space to for those who haven't shared, if they are inspired to speak to the surrender, acceptance, attachment piece of it. I think you're not necessarily a hard stop, but we have a few minutes left, and let's make some space for those who may not think that they want to say anything, and they might just have something to add.
Wow, it's really 5 above. How's that happen?
Hi. I was as Dean started to play and sing, I really had an immediate, I guess, sense of surrender and I think realization or appreciation that that moment, the present moment, was the only thing that mattered. And I think it was the combination of the word with the music that was such a powerful sort of portal into that feeling. Usually I think my thoughts, I frequently am following my thoughts down the river. And I think in that moment with the music, I was able to stay peaceful. So thank you.
Thank you.
And that was truly, I had nothing in mind to do this morning. So I texted Bill at around 8:30 and said, I got nothing. He said, well, trust yourself to let something flow. And that's what flows. So it was created, 5 minutes before I got here, and it was created in the moment. So it was exactly what we're all talking about here right now. It's letting go and letting the spirit guide. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so there's a great example of what we can accomplish by allowing, by surrendering, by letting go. Letting go and letting God is another one I heard a bunch of times. As an
Saying
example.
yes.
Mm.
Saying yes.
Mm-hmm.
Choosing to just.
Instead of just say no, just say yes. Sorry, Nancy.
Thank you, Andrea Hutter.
Oh, yeah. Let me,
It's just like, I know, quick story. So I had to fly to Chicago, Illinois, and to pick up a project car for my husband, Miata. So he knows I like to adventure and travel. So I took 2 little planes out to Chicago, picked up the car, and I was like, I really want to make it worth my while. Like, there's got to be some quaint town that I could just, experience. And so I didn't really know where I was going to go. So I just kind of drove 4 hours towards home, Trumbull from Chicago. And it was just about midnight, so I got in a hotel room and stayed up till like 3, just trying to figure out where to go. And then I was really excited once I found Yellow Springs, Ohio. And it explained how it's you know, a quaint town, and it's just very equal rights, and even Dave Chappelle bought a house there years ago, like gave up a $50 million, you know, show or
Contract.
contract, and bought a house there and with his family. And so I was super excited to get there. It took like 4 hours to get there from, I was in South Bend, Indiana. And so I finally get there and I'm driving, and it's just really, there's really great like trails to go through, and there's Yellow Springs, obviously, but it's not yellow, it's orange because of the iron, the high iron of the water. But I didn't even get to experience that, but I'm very eager to go back. When I drove into town, I see the hate has no. And so I was like, you know, I felt bad for it, like that, you know, because you like this, it just makes so much better sense, so much more sense. And so yeah, I was going to talk to you after the show,
Oh, yeah, the TV crew is behind. You can't see them, but they're here.
Song and dance. Anyways, so yeah, it was really cool, and I chose there because it was just, you know, a groovy town, and me coming from, you know, my home place of Santa Cruz, California, like I just am so eager to find these little quaint towns, and they had these 2 import stores that I just was like yearning to go to, because I just love the whole fact that these people go and buy these people that work so hard to create these beautiful things, and then they, you know, bring them back and they put them in their store for us to purchase. But yeah, and I met a great store owner. He's amazing. But, yeah, it's a whole. But
Cool.
yeah, it was really magical. And for me, like being brought up as a very sheltered kid, and then me just wanting to break free, you know, my senior year, like just to be me. And you know, I still like tend to get a little shy or self-conscious. It's just exhausting. But I love that I am able to like venture into a town that I don't know a soul. And I just, you know, like I may feel self-conscious, but I just surrender to like me knowing I'm a good person. I'm going to be drawn. Yeah, and everything was really kind of.
And here you are.
And here I am. Yes, so anyways.
So,
Thank
so Bill, I have a GPS story. So many years ago, before they actually were selling GPSs that you could put in your car, it was a software you could get. And you could buy a dongle that you would put into a laptop, and you could put the dongle up on your dashboard. And so we were doing a cross-country drive. My kids were little. I was out of work, and we were just exploring. And we were on the coast highway in California, and there was a mudslide, and we couldn't go anywhere. So I looked on this computer screen, and the GPS didn't tell me to go this way, but I could see that there were roads going up there. So I surrendered to the possibility of GPS was going to get me somewhere. It wasn't going to get me to anywhere in particular. So what I've done with my kids when they were little is we would do these excursions where we didn't have anything to do for the afternoon. We'd open up the GPS and we'd put our finger on the spot, and we would just take the roads that GPS took us to get there and see whatever we saw along the way. And it's another way to use the GPS. So
You literally use it.
yeah. So it's fun.
That's really cool. Well, why don't we, do you have another song we can end with?
I got one that I think is going to be interesting. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, when you hear this song, if you've heard it before, let it go and go with the flow. And think of this song as it might be a song of you speaking to yourself from your inner self, maybe speaking as your higher self or your spirit self or God speaking to you. It was written as a love song, I think, between a guy and a woman, but I think it's much bigger and deeper than that, okay? God bless the day I found you. I want to stay around you. And so I beg you, let it be me. Don't take this heaven from one. If you must cling to someone now and forever, let it be me. Each time we need love, I find complete love. Without your sweet love, what good would life be? So never leave me lonely. Tell me you love me only, and that you'll always let it be me, and that you'll always let it be me. Oh, and by the way, there's music here today in the
Oh,
barn.
yeah.
Yep.
At 5 o'clock, we have a Twilight music series, and we're gonna stay out of the heat and into the coolness of the stone barn. So you're welcome to come and bring your friends and bring your picnic and your family and bring your
Yeah.
cool drinks and
Yeah.
everybody. Bring your neighbors.
Yeah.
Say yes.
Say yes. Say yes to the
That's right.
music.
Say yes.
All right, thank you. So I'm just going to close this out with a short prayer to conclude our sacred time together. So pray to me, pray to Mother, Father, God, our source of the vast intelligence that we always have access to. Help us to surrender, to allow, let it be present to what is. Say yes to those moments that may not appear to be what we choose, but give us faith to know that our higher power knows our best path for us. Thank you for this time to be together, to celebrate, to sing, to chant, to show our devotion, our faithfulness. Let us walk from here in light and love and carry it out to the world. Amen. And so it is. And a special thank you to Miles and to all those on Zoom joining us today and contributing, to Dean for his beautiful music as always.
Thank
Stay
you,
cool.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah. You're
Bye-bye,
welcome.
everybody.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Enjoy your day.